Hello everyone and welcome to Breaking Even with Al Paton, a brand new show on your official SuperCoach AFL podcast feed every Wednesday. Al Paton, that's me, from the Herald Sun. We'll be talking SuperCoach and answering some of your questions about all the big news and moves of the week in SuperCoach, and I'll be joined by a regular cast, some of our favourites in Melbourne, starting with Patch, who's with us today.
Hello. I'm delighted to be on the new show with Al Paton, Very happy to be here. Keen for it.
Excellent. And Tim Michell also with us, of course, another of the News Corp sports gurus, AFL, fantasy, SuperCoach, does everything.
Al, coming in hot off the top too. Some breaking news on Breaking with Al Paton. The Western Bulldogs have overlooked both Braden Crossley and Dom Brew for their final list spot, and they're going to go in without a list spot open for this season. So I'm sure we'll get stuck into that soon. But breaking news off the top.
Bevo keeps on bevoing. He's just, God, you can rely on him.
No more Crossley.
What sort of text message would that be? Sorry, mate. Thanks for coming down, and we really appreciate your effort, but we're instead going to have nobody.
Yeah. We'd prefer no one.
Oh boy. And of course, Chloe Williams, another regular, you would have heard her on a lot of our pre-season shows. Chloe, great to have you with us again.
Happy to be here. I don't have any breaking news to provide today, but maybe in the future.
Yes, we'll hold you to that, but we will have some news coming up because we've got a big guest to kick off the show for the year, and that is SuperCoach Ambassador Leigh Montagna, who we chatted to just a little while ago and dropped some really interesting names and nuggets. He's been speaking to clubs and going and watching training, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But I thought I'd quickly start by going around the table and asking, after the first few practice games that we've seen and some breaking news, as Tim mentioned, I didn't know about that one, but I did see this morning Tom Green is out for a few weeks, so he's currently sitting in my midfield, so that's a change I definitely will have to make. And Kitty Coleman is another one who is still in, I think, about 25% of SuperCoach teams, but Chris Fagan telling Gerard Whateley today that he won't play until at least round 5, so you don't want to be starting with him. But based on any of that and some of the practice games on the weekend, Tim, any changes to your team? I know you're a man who likes to make changes.
No, not a whole heap. I've been a bit more restrained than normal this pre-season now, which is strange for me. I'm sure I'll tear it up in the next couple of weeks and probably start again. But the only sort of significant change I've made off the back of the Tom Green news is to put James Leake back into my side. I think that many players are going to be out of the GWS team early on with the suspensions that they copped as a result of the Wacky Wednesday, I think it was, whatever day of the week it was. And then obviously, Tom Green goes out of that team as well. You'd have to think James Leake, who was really good for their VFL side last year, comes firmly into calculations for not only opening round, but round 1, which is all important in SuperCoach. So that's about it for me at the moment. I already had Will Day, and I was pretty annoyed that he played really well because a hell of a lot of other people have him now. But Leake and maybe Sardis was the other one that feels like it happened a few days ago now, but feels like he's going to be a must-have just about now if he keeps up that those sort of high centre bounce attendances that he had against the Bulldogs.
What about you, Patch? Anyone who's come into your team that you maybe hadn't been thinking about before last weekend?
Yeah, I haven't made too many changes just yet. The fandom spoke about not overreacting to practice matches on the lair, and I follow that. Follow that advice pretty closely during the pre-season. It just kind of confirmed a bunch of 50-50 calls that I was wanting to make. So like Chloe and I have spoken a bit about, like, do we start Bailey Smith? Do we not start Bailey Smith? Based on the weekend, you'd probably have to start Bailey Smith. Max Holmes has been in calculations and, he's now sitting in my side. Mitch Nevitt's in there as well. So it's just kind of confirming a few little biases and a few little decisions as opposed to like rapidly shaking up my team. Jack Hutchinson is now in there. Tim's spoken a bit about him on Twitter. But yeah, no massive changes, no real big structural changes at this stage, but just kind of locking in that, we're going to need the expensive rookies, it looks like, and we're going to need, some of these players will just kind of have to line up.
It's funny that you mentioned that about Bailey Smith, actually, because he is included in my changes that I've made following the weekend. No major structural things for me either, but he has come in for Luke Parker provisionally. I may find another way to bring Luke Parker back in, but can't ignore Baz after the way he played on the weekend. I've also brought in Max Holmes too, so taking stock in Geelong as well. It's just kind of given me a bit more cash as well. Just taking Dan Houston out of my backline, I've been able to get another mid-pricer back there, which I love. And then Elijah Sardis has slotted in to my flex position. Still not 100% sure on his role, considering that Durham wasn't playing, but I'm sure he'll get some minutes, hopefully not as the sub. So pretty similar to you there, Patch, but nothing major structurally. And yeah, we'll see what happens on the weekend. I'm open to some other changes, but most of my key cogs have stayed the same.
The one huge change that I made to my side was bringing Liam Reedy in as my R3 ruckman. Just on the news, obviously, that Sean Darcy's going to be out for a little while, maybe 4 or 5 rounds. It seems like Freo want to play Reedy as a number 1 ruck. I don't think he's going to score too many points. I've seen some people toying with the idea of starting him at even R2 or maybe in the flex.
No.
And I must admit, I did do some little calculations. It's like, could you start with him? And would you get like 4 price rises and then flick him to someone who has one of those early buys? And I was going through all those buy teams, and there really wasn't anyone there that was jumping out at me. So
who are you going to move him to when he's made 10K in 4 weeks? Like that.
Yeah, I'll just get him up
he scored about 30
Max
against Cohen Livingston.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's going to end well.
But yeah, I mean, he might be playing on the bench, so.
Mm.
So that's the one little change at the moment. I think he's a shout, certainly at least to play early, which maybe Harry Boyd maybe doesn't. Well, Joey does touch on that, so that might influence my decision. But no other huge changes as yet. But yeah, someone like a Riley Sanders, would love to pick him. If those are the sort of picks that when they work, they're so fun to watch those players, but they don't always work. In fact, they don't often work. And Bevo, I mean, who knows? You just, obviously it's just an absolute classic preseason trap where, Bontempelli has a day off, Libba doesn't play. We'll just throw Riley Sanders in and he can have 100% centre bounces. And then when it gets to round 1, everything's changed and he's back in the subs vest or in the half-forward line or something like that. So still very scared about that. But we do have some more practice games to get to see exactly what it looks like, hopefully with some of those players back in, so it gives us a bit more of a realistic picture of how it might look. But obviously he's doing a lot of things right at this stage. But if you want a full review of last weekend's practice matches, go and listen to the Lair, as Patch mentioned. But now we'll jump into our interview with Leigh Montagna. Okay, the bulk of this show this year will be relying on your questions, so fire them in every week. And to kick us off, we have a very special guest for episode 1. No bigger guest, really, than Leigh Montagna, the new SuperCoach ambassador. So, Joey, welcome to the show. How are you feeling with the season really just around the corner?
Yeah, we're just talking off air, weren't we, Al? It's crept up pretty quick. You think February, you've got enough time to get organised, and before you know it, it's upon us. So busy at the moment, prepping for the season, looking at all the teams, and of course trying to finish a SuperCoach team as well. It just adds an extra layer. But no, looking forward to the year. It's always going to be good fun.
And how is your team coming together at this early stage? Are you the sort of player who jumps in and changes it every day, or you like to sit back and absorb all the info that we're getting over the preseason?
Yeah, I've sort of put a bit of a team together, but no doubt just continually updating it after we see some of the practice matches. And of course, as we see the community series, I'll continue to update it. So I've already made a few adjustments. I went out and watched the Essendon Bulldogs game and thrown a couple of players in that maybe I wouldn't have initially had, but that'll continue to change, no doubt, until we start.
All right, now we've got some questions here from the socials already for you, and that sort of touches on a topic which I think is interesting, and you can give us some real insight in from D Void on Twitter, or X now, has asked, how much faith can we put in a player's performance during practice matches, reflecting on what we'll see when the season actually starts? And then he's followed up with another one about interrupted pre-seasons and what does that really mean? So, I mean, from your time going back to playing days, but then also, watching the clubs, how real is what we're seeing? And, if we see a player pop off in the preseason, should we be jumping all over them, or we need to take it all with a bit of a big grain of salt?
Yeah, you've got to take a bit of caution into it. I think, no doubt, it's a great insight to look at a player, more so than the teams. I don't really take too much notice of how teams play, whether they win or lose and those sorts of things. But certainly for individuals, you can get a good insight. As we said, you've always got to be, a bit cautious, because some players are going to get more opportunity to show what they've got. But you're knowing that some senior players are probably going to go back into those positions. But it certainly is a really good start, a good starting point, particularly some of the younger players that you're hearing a lot about and you're expecting to maybe play some senior footy. And then when you do see them live, it can give you a really good insight.
when you were playing, did it change how you approached those practice matches from when you were a younger player trying to prove yourself and break into the team compared to just getting the run in the legs as an older player? And how does that then translate to how you watch the games now? Do you really put a lot of stock in young kids that are really trying to break into a side, or is it just kind of, you take them with a very hefty grain of salt?
100%. When you become a senior player and you're established, you're more just trying to get through the game without getting injured. You're just trying to get the match conditioning. You wouldn't, you're not out there to try and be best on ground or do anything like that and have to try and sort of push your case forward. So you don't worry too much about the senior players. If they don't get a kick in the preseason, you don't take any notice. But for the younger players that are trying to cement themselves in the side and are trying to push for selection, they are the ones that are out there definitely playing for keeps. And I think we've already seen that across some of the limited sort of practice matches we've seen. So that is what you are looking for in these games. And back to your question now, with the interrupted preseason, I do think it plays a factor. I know there are a lot of players that have interrupted preseasons that can still have good years. My feel is if a player's to have sort of a personal best season, 9 times out of 10, they've had a full preseason. So if you are sort of looking at some of the premiums or some of the players at the top end, if they have had an interrupted preseason, they're still going to be good players, but it might be hard to reach, their sort of optimal career best year. That's sort of from my experience as a player and obviously seeing a lot of teammates as well. So they're just a couple of things you can take into consideration.
For sure. Now, obviously, a lot of interest in St Kilda this year in SuperCoach, and you'll be keeping a close eye, I presume, still on how the Saints go. Chloe, you an avid Saints watcher as well. Who do we need to know about down there this year?
Well, it's going to be fascinating, isn't it? They've got a lot of injuries at the moment, so what their makeup is going to look like, for round one is going to be interesting. We know they are now one of the bottom 4 sides in regards to age, so they are going to continue to blood youth. It's always interesting with Ross because they have said on record that even though they are rebuilding and going to play some youth, they still want to be competitive. They still want to try and win every week and play finals. So there will be a mix, I still think, of senior players and some youngsters. So I am just treading a little bit warily with St Kilda because, Ross does like to, maybe go back to the Websters and Stockers and a few of these sort of established players, maybe a Zane Cordy as well, now with Dougal Howard going down. So they've brought in Jack McRae and they will go with some senior players. But the ones that have caught the eye, I've been down to training a few times and I know there's some big raps on them, is Max Hall, who was a mid-season pick last year, who's been training with when they play match simulation. He's been in the A team, playing as a small forward. So he looks like he's sort of a front runner to maybe play as a bit of a pressure forward. Hugo Garcia is another one that's pretty cheap SuperCoach option that has been playing as a centre bounce option, almost in their starting centre bounce midfield alongside Jack Steele and Jack McRae since Filippo's gone down. He's not a massive ball winner, but he's a tackle machine, so he might score a lot of points. The one I know they do have big raps on that is good value is Angus Hastie. They gave him some games last year. They think he's really bulked up. He's put on 6 or 7 kilos over the summer, hasn't lost any of his running, and I think he might be the one that will get an opportunity maybe in a sort of half-back role or wing spot alongside some of those other boys. So they're probably the ones that I'm keeping a close eye on.
Oh, you can see everybody frantically taking notes as we hear these names. There's some really good ones there. I know Hugo Garcia was someone I really liked. What we saw of him, just a few little cameos last year, came on as a sub a couple of times and looked really good. So yeah, if he can get a regular gig, especially in that main midfield rotation, that'd be awesome. But anyone else that you want to know about or the people have asked about, Chloe?
The other one that I was wanting to know about is Ari Schoenmaker. He's a great value option in SuperCoach this year. How do you see his role and how do you see that affecting his SuperCoach scoring?
Yeah, he is another one I'm just not 100% sure of as yet. I do think he'll get opportunity and no doubt he'll play as a defender. And I think with Dougal Howard going down, he might get a look at it because really they are a bit thin for talls down back. So obviously Cal Wilkie's going to be the anchor there. They've lost Josh Battle. So do they go Zane Cordy, Schoenmaker? I would probably be leaning that way at the moment. I know there's been a bit of talk about maybe as Caminiti go into the back line. I think they might start with him forward. I think they want to try and have that sort of Caminiti, Sharman, King combination and see how that looks. So Schoenmaker is definitely an option and will be in the mix, but we'll have to watch a couple of these pracky matches to just make sure that he cements his spot in that back 6 or 7.
And one very popular pick that hasn't come up yet, Toby Travalia. was a highly rated draft pick. Do you think he will play? And if so, where does he get a run?
Yeah, that's another one that I'm not sure of because he's been a little bit slow with his preseason. I know he's up and going now, but that sort of wing, half back, half forward role where Travalia can play. There's a stack of players in that sort of role for St Kilda. Wanganeen Miller and Sinclair are going to be across half back. I'm wondering whether Hasty is ahead of Travalia at the moment. You've got Mason Wood, Brad Hill, Darcy Wilson. Ryan Burns has been a sort of regular player, wing, half back as well. So it might be tough. I'm not sure yet whether he'll be starting in the initial best team for round one. He might just be one to keep an eye on. No doubt he'll get some games at some stage. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do with him.
That's interesting. He's in 55% of teams at the moment. So yeah, that's a very keen watch over the practice games. And the other guy that's just about one of the most popular picks in SuperCoach is Harry Boyd, who's come in at just the $99K price tag in the ruck down there. And with Marshall having a bit of a preseason injury, we should get a decent look at him. But what do you think the team will look like when it actually gets to round one? Will he get a game?
Yeah, I don't want to dampen the spirits of all these SuperCoach coaches that have him in the team. My feel is if Rowan Marshall's fit, I don't think Harry Boyd will be in the team. I think the way that St Kilda will want to structure up is Rowan Marshall be the number one ruck and then pinch hit with a Caminiti or someone like that as the second ruck. I don't think from what I've seen that Boyd can play as a forward. And I don't think they're prepared at this stage yet to throw Rowan Marshall and play him as a predominant forward and play Harry Boyd first ruck. You've got to remember, Harry Boyd basically came in over the summer because almost St Kilda were out of desperation. They didn't have a backup ruckman other than young Max Heath, who still needs a bit of time. So they had to go get someone. I know there's been a lot of hype about him and a lot of talk, but I'm just a bit more cautious at the moment. As I said, we're going to have to wait and see on Marshall. But if he's fit, my personal view at this stage is I don't think Harry Boyd will start the season. But I could be wrong.
Interesting. So I know you've spent a little bit of time over in WA in the last week or so in the preseason, having a close look at the Dockers and the Eagles, and plenty of cheap options, especially there for us in SuperCoach. Any intel you can give us at this stage?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great options out west for the SuperCoach coaches out there. Starting with the West Coast Eagles, I think that Bo Allen hasn't done anything wrong. A bigger body, a mature body, ready to play. Looked okay in the Pracky match against Richmond from what I saw the other day. So I'd almost expect him to play. Elijah Hewitt's the one that I'm really keen on. He's in my team. We know a talent that he is. He showed glimpses of it a couple of seasons ago. He's getting a full crack as an inside midfielder and ready to go. I think that for me, he's in the side. And the other one that they've got big raps on, who got drafted mid-season last year as a forward, but they really think can be a midfielder wingman, is Jack Hutchison. I obviously am friends with Andrew McQualter. He's got big raps on him, so I would expect him to be starting in the side and getting a fair chunk of time up around the footy. So at his price of sort of $220K or something along those lines, he's in my team at the moment. And similar for Fremantle, I think there's a lot of really good options. I reckon Nathan O'Driscoll's a no-brainer. For me, he's going to be a breakout star. Another one who's had 2 years of injury troubles. He'll be part of the midfield wing rotation at Fremantle to start the season, under 200,000. I've got him in. And then there's going to be guys, Erasmus, I think, is going to get a chance without Nat Fyfe to start the season. I think they need one more midfielder to go along with the big boys, the superstars they've already got in there. So Erasmus is one that at this stage we'll have in. And then maybe Murphy Reid or Cooper Simpson, one of the two, might start as a half forward for Fremantle as well, especially with Switkowski now just getting a little bit of concussion and the makeup of their side. They're two cheap options as well. And even Liam Reedy, another cheap ruck option. I know Justin Longmuir does like to go with the two ruckmen. So Jackson starting as a forward and playing second ruck rather than him being the number one ruck and maybe having to use Josh Tracy as a second ruck. So Liam Reedy, he played the majority of the game against the All-Stars. He was okay, and I think he'll get every chance to put his hand up and be the starting ruckman for at least the first couple of weeks of the season until Sean Darcy's available.
Yeah, some really good names there. So some other questions that people have asked at Rookie Coach AFL, asking about the ruck. So what's your ruck setup look like at the moment? And he's asking about Tristan Cherry, whether he's a safe pick to hold his own with a tough fixture to start potentially for the Kangaroos.
Yeah, at this stage, I've just gone with the two studs straight up in the rucks. I was tossing up Sherry and Gawn. I know they're the two obvious. I went back to Max Gawn. I just think particularly maybe the first half of the season, while he's fresh and his body's good, he's just too good to overlook. And I'm leaning towards maybe a Darcy Cameron at this stage as someone that I think can go to another level. I think he finished top 3 in their best and fairest last year. I'm not sure whether Mason Cox is in their best team anymore, so Darcy Cameron might get even more responsibility to shoulder the load in the ruck, but there's plenty of options there, isn't there? It's a bit of pick your own poison. Sherry, no doubt, is a good option as well. So, plenty to pick from.
In terms of rucks, do you know anything about Matt Flynn? He did exit that game early the other day with back soreness. Do you have any update there, or are you concerned about his durability this year at all in a ruck or a flex position potentially?
Yeah, I'm staying away from that ruck position at West Coast at the moment. I think that the Bailey Williams and Flynn option, I think they're still trying to even toss up what it looks like for them. I wouldn't be putting Flynn in my side at the moment. But yeah, it's just another one that you'll have to watch.
Yeah. What are you doing with the flex position at this point? Obviously, it's a bit exciting and a new toy that we're still trying to figure out what to do with. How are you approaching it?
I might be leaning to you two experts to give me a bit of a feel on what should be the options. I haven't really been able to put enough thought in how it should be used. Are we using it around sort of the buy teams? Are you using it for a different, sort of dual position roles? What's your sort of take on it at the moment, Al? I'm interested to get your take on how you think at the moment that the best way to use the flex is.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've jumped around a bit myself over the preseason with a few different ways of using it. And I mean, at the moment, really, it's just an extra spot for a cheap player or a rookie that I can't fit in somewhere else. And, someone like a Hugo Garcia could be perfect for it if he's, a little bit of that expensive rookie price, but he's dual position. And, I can't sort of find a spot for him on the field in the forward line or in the midfield. You could chuck him down there. I mean, I know a lot of people would love to start an extra ruckman down there, and maybe, if we get a Reedy early on and, if Braden Crosley bursts through and is playing for the Dogs or Harry Boyd, those kind of guys would be perfect. But, yeah, as you've sort of already touched on, it's always tricky proposition with knowing, which of those cheap guys is actually going to play. So I'm a bit scared off going down that road at the moment. So it's really just an extra rookie for me for the moment. But, I don't know if, Patch, what you're doing there, has that evolved over the preseason?
I think it's pretty much been a rookie for me so far, especially just to start and, try and figure out what the hell's going on and what the hell we're doing with it. And, eventually we'll stumble our way into an answer somewhere. But, yeah, I don't like the idea of going a ruck in there because I think it traps us in. But, again, we'll know the answer come August as to what the right solution was.
Yeah. At the moment, I've just got one of those sort of rookie mids that I've sort of got a whole heap of these rookie midfielders that, a couple of them on the bench that will probably play, as mentioned, Elijah Hewitt and someone like that I think will be lining up at the start of the season. So that's where I've gone with it at the moment.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a way to get an extra one of those guys on the field, and because that sort of rookie roulette early in the season is always so hard when you're trying to know, how do you know if it's a Hewitt or another cheap player who's going to score better that weekend? So it sort of gives you an extra crack at it, which is handy. I mean, another guy in that sort of price bracket, I'm just keen on your thoughts if you've watched him closely or spoken to people around the clubs, is Elijah Sardis at Essendon, coming into his third or fourth year, I think, and he's really struggled to get a regular game up until now. But just everyone's raving about his preseason. Is it real, do you think?
Well, I hadn't heard a lot, and he probably wasn't in my consideration, to be honest. But as I said off the top, I went out to Whitten Oval and had a look at that game, and I was pleasantly impressed with what I saw. He got plenty of opportunity. Again, it's probably like what I touched on earlier. Maybe some of these young guys get more opportunity to try and showcase what they've got, but I certainly don't think he did himself any harm. I think the Darcy Parish injury might just open the opportunity for him to play in there. Dylan Shields gone, out of the midfield, the centre square. You got to remember Durham's going to come back into that mix. Caldwell, Zach Merritt. They do have a few options, but right now he was one of the ones that I've added in off the back of that performance. So I think that looking at the way he went about it, looking at him getting a fair bit of chunk centre bounce, says to me that they are considering him to be in the lineup, and I'll put him in at the moment. And same with Isaac Kako. I wasn't sure whether a small forward is really one that I wanted to explore, but I thought he showed enough, and he got up the ground high enough that he might have some impact.
And the other one in that game for the Dogs was Riley Sanders. It's a bit more expensive, but similar sort of scenario where he's coming into his second year now and showed a bit last year, but Bevo made him earn it by giving him the subs vest a couple of times and sending him back to the VFL. But now he's absolutely flying. But again, the Bulldogs have a lot of midfielders, so where do you see him fitting in?
Yeah, that's a bit more of a tricky one, more because of the price. I think no doubt he's going to play a lot of footy, but sort of falls into that, maybe the camp at the moment, that the pre-season flyer, that just always is going to stand out, a bit like Finn McRae that everyone's finally given up on after 3 years of being a pre-season flyer. Riley Sanders, he's going to get opportunity, and I think the Treloar injury does give him that crack. But, the starting midfield is probably going to be Bont, Libba, and Ed Richards. Kennedy and Harms are going to be around the mark. Little Riley Garcia played as an inside mid and did some really nice things as well. And I just get a bit nervous with Bevo. You can't trust Bevo. You don't know. And I just think at the price, that sort of, the mid sort of 340s or whatever it is, I'm not sure whether I've got him in yet. I think that someone like, say, for example, Bailey Smith, who's 50,000 more expensive, but you saw Bailey play on the weekend and thought, wow, he's ready to go. So if it was a toss-up of those two, I'm probably leaning to Bailey Smith more than Riley Sanders, but I wouldn't be putting anyone off if they want to pick him in their team.
Now, obviously, we're all a bit scared of Bevo, but there's a couple of other good options for the Dogs as well. We've had a few questions come in, and one of them surprised me a little. Someone was wondering if maybe Jed Buslinger would be a good option with Liam Jones going down, and then we've obviously got mature age Sam Davidson as well. Potentially, we were already considering him, but with that Waitman injury as well, he might just become a little bit more relevant too. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on those two?
Yeah, like Buslinger may get a look at it. Even if he does, is he going to be a high scorer? I doubt it. I think they've still got enough tools with Lobb, O'Donnell, obviously they really rate, and Buka Kamas gets enough opportunity down there. So Buslinger, he might get a crack at it. I still think my understanding last year was maybe he was still a bit off, being a regular player in that side. I mean, even a Jordan Croft maybe ahead of him. I don't know where they want to play him, but if they want to try and get an extra tool into the side. And, Davidson, he did some nice things. He's obviously been pretty spruiked over pre-season. I watched the game, did some nice things. It seems like he's going to be absolutely in the mix for round one. Again, whether he's a prolific enough ball winner for me to put in my SuperCoach side is probably something that I'm a bit wary of.
All right, Joey, thanks for it. It's just, lots of great names there to go away and ponder. But finish off, the toughest question of the lot has come from at Analysis Department on Twitter asking, what's your best finish in SuperCoach?
No, I couldn't say what my best finish is. No,
you're more of a leagues man.
Yeah, a league man. Yeah, the overall there were a lot of zeros. In there, so it wasn't too high. But I just enjoy playing it. It's good fun. Adds an extra dimension to when you're watching games of footy, and continues to create a bit of banter, and I love it. So try and test my knowledge and see how we go.
Yeah, who's the dark horse in the Fox Footy office? Have you got somebody that just left field just is super into it? And ready to cause an upset each week?
We've got one of our sort of stats gurus in there, Maxie Lawton, who puts a lot of thought into everything he does. He sort of does spreadsheets and analysis, and he ran our NFL fantasy one over the summer, and I'm sure he'll be setting up some of the SuperCoach leagues in the Fox Footy office. So Maxie Lawton's always a threat. He always wins the tipping contest. He's a guy that puts a lot of work into everything he does. So he's probably the man.
I'll keep an eye on him. One thing, Joey, that I remembered from, way back in your playing days is that I think you're actually can have a claim to fame as being one of the few people who's responsible for potentially changing the SuperCoach scoring system in a very minor way. I don't know if you remember there was a game where the scores were level with only a very short amount of time to go, and you toe poked it behind through, might have been against the Swans, I think,
yes,
or rain or something.
Yep.
And normally champion data says that behind is only worth 1 point regardless of what happens. But they do give extra weighting to match-winning goals. And in that particular game, they went back and looked over the tape and thought, well, we can tell he's actually deliberately done that, and that's won them the game. So you got a few extra points on top of that. So
did I? Well, I never knew that, but I do remember that game against the Swans. Scores were level, and was able to throw it on the boot. And I've never kicked the match-winning goal, but I kicked the match-winning point. So that is a bit of my claim to fame. And now there's a little bit of juice added on top of it. I like it.
Very good. All right, that's been awesome. Thanks so much for jumping on and joining us. And we might try and now touch base again before round one, which, as we said, is not too far away. But thanks again, Joey, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Great interview there with Joey. Chloe, what did you take out of that? You making another wholesale team change?
Yes, I will be whipping out my team as soon as we wrap up. I would love to try and find a way actually to bring Max Hall in, as he was someone that I was looking at a lot earlier on in the preseason when he was playing with the A team for a fair bit down there. at St Kilda. So, he might be, I haven't double checked his price. I think he might be one of those lower 100s sort of guys. So he might be worth rolling the dice on. But we do have a lot of good, expensive rookies too who are bound to make a lot of cash. So I'll see how the team balance is looking, but I was liking that pick from him.
Toby Trevally was a bit of a bomb, wasn't it? We'll wait and see what the team looks like. But yes, I think he's in 55% of teams currently. So hoping he rolls out there in round 1.
Not as a sub.
Well, yeah, exactly. Now, we do have some more practice matches coming up this weekend, so I thought we'll finish off with a bit of a preview of who we are keeping a close eye on. And it starts on Thursday night with some kind of, I don't know how this is going to work, but
multi-ball.
Gold Coast versus Brisbane versus Collingwood. So, Patch, what are you looking forward to in this kind of hybrid combination of something?
I'm looking forward to the boldest innovation in Australian rules football since AFL XL. That's what I'm excited about. Yeah. Get some people standing out there on trapezes and on top of people's shoulders. And it's very hard to know what to take out of this until we actually see what is happening and what the hell is going on.
Where's the third set of goals?
Yeah,
that's what I want. Is it like on a flank or what are we talking?
I don't know. Maybe the Carrara redevelopment is just getting really strange new directions. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure what's going on up on the People's Republic of the Gold Coast. So it's very hard to know. I'm very keen to see if Ed Allen is playing midfield or forward, and how many others are in that game. But aside from that, Leo Lombard, if he's playing pure small forward, is he playing Dylan Moore small forward, or is he playing like Charlie Cameron small forward? Because they're two very different perspectives, but they're kind of the two I'm looking at out of that game. But geez, it could be an absolute wash and an absolute mess, especially if it's VFL players running around as well. Like Tim, you were saying that.
Well, what are we meant to take if the word is that Gold Coast might play against essentially two reserve sides, and if that eventuates, what do we mean? If Ben Jepson comes out and has
40
and has his usual 40 intercepts like he did in the VFL for Southport last year? What are we meant to take out of that? It's going to be very hard to know. And that's why, I think, without going over last weekend too much, I don't understand why people are reading lots into the Indigenous All-Stars game. There was 57 players that took the field in that game. So we're looking at 13 more players than we get in an average SuperCoach game to divide the points between.
Yep.
And it was nice to see Nathan O'Driscoll play well, for example. But, I think people are kidding themselves if they're reading a lot into that Indigenous game and putting players in based on what they saw in that particular game.
Yeah,
you're singing from my hymn sheet there, Tim. With people telling me you have to put Jason Horne-Francis in after he dominated for the All Stars, but I'm holding out still on that one. But I will be watching very keenly when Adelaide and Port Adelaide play on Friday, I think, at Mount Barker. So let's see him in an actual team with the actual Port Adelaide midfield. How many CBAs does he get when I'm not saying he's not a good player, but my concern is that they have a lot of midfielders there. The way Port play, they don't get huge CBA numbers anyway. Even Zach Butters only gets 60% or something. Can he get in ahead of those guys, or jump the queue ahead of a Willem Drew or an Ollie Wines or someone like that? So just want to see it something that looks a little bit more like what we might see in round 1.
Oh, you are giving in before round 1. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the day where you finally do. So let's run
Phantom. Yeah, he's still holding out. He's still not. Yeah, I know. He's being stubborn yet again.
That weird game up on the Gold Coast, that's not the only game that we're watching this week. Who are a couple of players that you've got your eye on? I think we're going to run through sort of our top 10 to keep an eye on this week.
So we have 5 more practice matches, match simulations coming up this weekend, kicking off with that interesting 3-way contest on Thursday night. Then we've got Sydney and the Giants on Friday, followed by the Crows and Port Adelaide. And on Saturday, Carlton plays St Kilda and North Melbourne plays Melbourne. So plenty of players we want to be watching very closely with an eye to our SuperCoach teams in 2025. Number 1 on my list is Jason Horne-Francis. I've been holding out, not putting him in my team. Watching the All-Stars game on the weekend made that quite difficult, but I do want to see him in an actual Port Adelaide team with Port Adelaide teammates, other Port Adelaide midfielders, see where he fits in that mix. And if he's getting a lot of centre bounce minutes, it's going to be very hard to leave him out. Patch, who are you looking at this weekend?
Give me some Ed Allen action. I mentioned it. Before I just wanted to see if he's playing midfield, if he's playing forward, what the deal is there.
Tim, who are you watching?
Isaac Rankin's been in and out of my team, Al. Now there's talk that he might spend up to 80% of his game time in the midfield, which would make him impossible to leave out. So, yeah, big watch on his mid-forward split in that game against Port.
Chloe, which game are you keeping a close eye on?
Well, I'm keen to see the Giants in action. They've obviously been smashed with injuries and suspensions too. So someone I do have my eyes on for this weekend is Finn Callaghan with the recent Tom Green injury news. I've got enough mid-prices in my team, but why not look at another one this weekend?
We'll keep going around the room. I'm going to be watching Tom De Koning. I had him in for a lot of preseason. He's not there right now. I'm just very worried about this old Mark Pitnet situation. I'm not sure how much we can lock in based on one practice match, but I will be keeping a very close eye on what his ruck split looks like.
Yep, after our chat with Joey Montagna, I want to know what the hell is going on with the St Kilda rookies. I'll be looking at all of them that are on the field against Carlton. What the hell is going on? Is Toby Travalia going to play? Is Max Hall legit? Does Harry Boyd exist? All of these questions I want answered to the best extent that we can.
I've got a couple. One's obvious. One is somehow still a pod. I think he's going to be really good. So Clayton Oliver's preseason faultless to this point. I think most of us have got him, but just want to see that evidence now in a game against an opposition side. And I know people say it's only North Melbourne, but North midfield's not all that bad. It hasn't been the last couple of years. So Clayton Oliver against an actual midfield will be good to see. And then in that weird scratch match that we've talked about, Harry Perryman's come into my side this week as well. I think as a midfielder at Collingwood, he could be potentially 15 to 20 points underpriced at 417k. So keen to see how he goes alongside Nick Dacos.
You must be very keen because I think we've got him on the list twice. But to that, we'll jump over to number 10. And have you got maybe a left field name for us, Chloe?
Well, it was going to be Harry Perryman, but I can chuck a field name because I do like to do that. He isn't on the list that we're looking at in front of us, but with the recent Kitty Coleman news, it's not a value pick, it's a primo. Should we be looking and paying more attention to Dane Zorko is what I will leave you with.
Tim, thoughts on Dane Zorko?
Yeah, I'd rather not comment. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it, Al.
I thought you were going to say, Chloe, Jack Silvani.
Just ruined my team.
No, Jack Silvani's my surprise little. If he's playing centre half back and intercepting, I don't know, maybe. What's another mid-pricer in the forward line?
Please pick him so I can beat your team, Patch.
What's the worst that could happen? He could score 30. I know. I just want to look. I want to see if there's anything there. I've got a spot for Jack Hutchinson. Someone in that thing. He's a moonshot to end up in my side, but I'm intrigued.
So we haven't heard much about him, but there was talk early on that he is training with the defenders, so a new role. Back. I mean, I actually love that about SuperCoach when you get a player that you've never thought about before. I remember, someone like a Jarman Impey years ago who's like no one we've ever considered, and then all of a sudden he has a new role. I mean, Kitty Coleman did this as well, and they become SuperCoach relevant. So
he's got a new hat.
He's definitely training as a defender, but yeah, you've got McGovern and you've got Haynes there who could potentially take some of those points. So it's an interesting watch, but yeah. I'm not sure if he'll get the scoring capacity, but you just never know. He's definitely down there. So
it's just not happening.
I just want to see it.
Stop trying to make Silvani happen, Patch.
All right, thank you, guys. I mean, there's a question here, but we didn't get to. Kyle asking, is Luke Jackson a good pick for R2?
No.
And, yeah, I think the Liam Reedy thing kind of answers that. And Joey did touch on this, that they don't, last year was a bit of a different equation where we thought Darcy out, Jackson's going to be the number one ruck, but it seems like they want to play Reedy there and just keep Jackson.
We all got stuck with him late last year, didn't we? And it was awful. You just didn't enjoy it at all. So no, I wouldn't go there.
Yep, fair. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for watching and tuning in. Send us your questions in advance, but we'll remind everybody before next week's episode of Breaking Even with Al Paton. It's been awesome in episode 1 and can't wait for the next one.